considering my part one of self-examination, I find a lot of people asserted that I was talking about the balance, the dual components, and they say you have to find the balance. The balance is equivalent to what the political world asserts is diversity. And diversity is simply the toleration of different factions of the human community. So when you're talking about the state of coexisting together, which is considered the balance, you're still dealing with conflict because you're dealing with each one's toleration of one another. We come to an agreement to where we decide to try to live together. So the trying to coexist with one another, you're still dealing with a whole bunch of conflict because of the dual components that's going on inside of each component, So that is, how the Buddha had said you must find the middle way, So the whole thing is, as long as we are contained inside of this organism, which was created with dual components, good and evil, from a dual creator, you're always going to have this inner conflict going on. Now, this doesn't necessarily imply that we're all going to be walking around here irritated or angry or imbalanced. Now there are some human beings who do walk around with that. But what I found out that the majority of the time when you come in contact with human beings as such, these are the people who haven't taken the proper time to search within themselves to find out exactly where these disturbances are emanating from inside. When the majority of the time, those disturbances come from past experiences that has affected us tremendously. And those things are continuously unaddressed. As I was saying, when people say that I have a dark side, but I reject it. When they say I reject it, it means I don't allow my inner dark side to totally consume me to the degree that I can function on a basis that I'm trying to become a righteous human being. But when people totally deny that they have a dark side, that gives power to that energy inside of you. If you want to say energy things, I don't really like using the word energy because of the this crazy new wave community that constantly go around, even though they complain about the religious community, primarily the Christians, are saying that you're going to go to hell or you're an evil person, but they claim the same thing when they come around people. Oh, this person is low vibration. You need to raise your vibration up to a higher frequency and all that rubbish, because that's pretty much all it is. Because you can't put one person down without first putting yourself down. So the whole thing is we spend a whole lot of time looking at one another when we really need to study ourselves. I think that if we studied ourselves and become the best example that we can possibly be as human beings, the example implies that there's someone outside of ourselves that are observing us, and they notice of how we are functioning, and then they come to us and they ask us questions of how did you get this way, and we're able to not point them to any religious institution. We just offer them the opportunity of being willing to observe themselves and go in and make the necessary arrangements and adjustments in order to become better human beings. So when it all boils down to it, the challenge is always going to be within ourselves. So simply because, people say you have to find the balance. The yin and yang is always in conflict because each one thinks that they're correct. I mean, if you look at movies and the demonstration of evil people, mistakenly, it's always these characters that are walking around with this angry look on their face. But what people don't understand is that whether a person chooses primarily their dark side, even within their dark side, as far as they're concerned, due to the fact that they've decided to execute that, they think that executing their evil side is right to them. And so the majority of the time when you really sit down and you talk to people, as I have, who have totally given themselves over to their dark side, those people are humble because they're at peace within choosing that aspect of their being. They're at peace. Now, people who have chosen the opposite of that, who have chosen primarily their good side, they're at peace. But all at the same time, these elements of peace inside of both duals, when they come in contact with one another, there's always going to be some conflict because their perceptions are in opposed to how one functions and how the other one functions. And so once these two come to an agreement, or as they say, we will agree to disagree, and they both go their separate ways, what is continued is the element of disagreement, and therefore the animosity. The animosity is present because they didn't stay together and try to talk it out or reason it out. When I found out that it's impossible, because the nature of good and the nature of evil is obviously created to always oppose one another. So there is no coexistence in terms of being inside of this organism. It's a battle of the inner self. When someone comes up and tells me that, David, you're a good person, I always reject it. No, I'm both, because I deal with myself on a daily basis. And due to the fact that I'm always able to see of where I can improve myself, I'm working my way towards the kingdom of righteousness within myself. Now, people may say, well, you just got through saying you're always going to have an evil side. Of course, and you're always going to have a side that is righteous. But all at the same time, I'm able to recognize both good and evil. I'm able to recognize those two. So where my heart is what's going to determine where I'm going to choose one or the other. Now, I've lived my life choosing to execute the goodness inside of myself instead of the evil inside of myself. And that ends up being a person who has never smoked, never drank, never did drugs, never got arrested, because I chose to exercise the goodness that is within me in opposition to the darkness that exists inside of me. And so when you acknowledge both, then you acknowledge your full self and therefore your potential to execute either one. So when you live as a human being, this is one of the reasons why I tell people when I say stay human, I hear a lot of people say, well, we're only human, but you come up and you always hear people say, I'm only human when they make mistakes. But making mistakes is a part of being human. And therefore, when you make mistakes, you put yourself in a position to where you can learn how to do better instead of accepting that mentality that says, well, I make a mistake. I do this because I'm only a human being. That's no justification of executing wrongdoing. That's no justification, because we were created with a dual component, which is goodness and evil. So you have to decide which one of these you choose to execute. You might as well say fundamentally. That's the battle of the self, and we come upon different experiences that's going to permit us to challenge ourselves on how we're gonna either respond to it or react to it. Because I've been through a whole lot of things, especially with my times in Georgia when I was dealing with this woman, Salam Yuma. I mean, I've never in my life met any human being that was so cruel, so cruel, and there's a couple of guys that I was dealing with in Georgia who were actually friends of hers, and he was telling me, you really need to deal with that in one of your videos. I've dealt with that in one of my videos, but I only told a certain amount, but all at the same time, I've healed from that. So really going in on her is it's not going to do anything. I've gotten past that. Now if she haven't progressed since then, that's really doesn't have anything to do with me. It doesn't have anything to do with me. I'm primarily dealing with growing from that and observing where I did wrong and observing the mistakes that I did. That way I don't have to repeat them and put myself in a similar situation to where I have to suffer more. So the whole thing of self-examination is a constant journey of learning of self based upon the effects of the environment. And that's the fundamental lesson of what Yeshua had taught. This is why he said, my kingdom is not of this world. To deny your dark side gives power to the evil within. I'm not in denial. And the only way that things will get better, you have to embrace it. You have to not deny it. You have to accept this is who and what I am. This is the way that I was created. And when you say that, you're not blaming the Creator for creating you in such a way. You're not denying that you were in fact created as such. And so you have really no choice but to learn of who and what you are and decide which one of those entities, those dual entities within you and myself that we feel more comfortable utilizing in our everyday life. It's really that simple. It's not complicated. So it's not that we're separated by way of race and religion. That's all an illusion, and that's always been the most deadliest form of propaganda. We're separated based upon our moral standards. I'm going to cut this video very short. Of course, this is a somewhat part two to the battle of the self, part one, which really should have just only been part one, because there's not a whole lot more I can say about it, because it's a very basic and fundamental battle within each and every one of us. So it really it's really not a whole lot to say about it at this point. Anyway, I say at this point is because there's been an epidemic of pneumonia that has been hitting Las Vegas, and let alone I'm starting to be in touch with a whole lot of people who are telling me that pneumonia is hitting them as far as New York and even over there in South Africa with a young lady friend of mine named Bianca. She was saying that the pneumonia epidemic is over there as well. So I'm just going to cut this short. That's one of the reasons why I put the other footage before this one. But what's most important about the battle of the self, it pretty much is the basic principle of what Yeshua was teaching, even though once the message got into the church and they turned it into a religious format, and they influenced the people to depend upon the pastors and everything, and instead of them telling the truth of Yeshua and God itself telling us to self-observe ourselves and make the necessary adjustments and becoming better human beings ourselves, within ourselves, from our own conscious decisions, they had manipulated the world to solely depend upon the religious scholars and therefore the pastors for your overwhelming change, when your overwhelming change has always been imbued inside of you to perform yourself. When you make an honest decision to go through the process of self-resolution, it is within ourselves. So this is primarily what this short video is going to be about, and it is going to be short because I'm still dealing with the this whole pneumonia thing, and so it's remains to be simple. You know, self-observation is the fundamental construction and reconstruction of the human being. You know, we were created in such a way to where we can make the necessary changes to repair ourselves upon every level of the being. We already know what our power source is. We already know that we have a creator, and therefore we didn't create ourselves. And therefore we also primarily understand that once we understand that we are an extension of a divine creator who is also, as ourselves, a dual being which carries the attributes of good and evil, and therefore we are related, as the previous video had opened up with the movie Legend. You will never be able to defend your dark side because you were created with it. So we have to understand the importance of wisdom and intelligence in order for ourselves. We will be able to coexist with both of those living and entities within ourselves. Because before we can coexist with one another, like you and I, we have to be able to coexist within ourselves in terms of finding what most people call the balance. And we also have to understand the fact that simply because you have come to the capacity to where you have found the balance within yourself, that doesn't imply that you are all good. Balance doesn't imply all good. Balance implies that a person have learned themselves to the degree currently to where they have found means of being able to coexist within their own selves in regards to their good side and their bad side. See, because if we are able to perceive our bad side, that's a good sign, because a whole lot of people are walking around on the planet right now who lack perception or even insight to what is going on inside of them that is perceived as bad. Some people can't even perceive that, but even they will be presented with a time of where that enlightenment will in time spark within them to where they will be able to understand where they need to make improvements, just the same as you and I. And so with that being said, as I said, I'm gonna make this very short, because I'm still, you might as well say, suffering with this pneumonia thing. And so I want a lot of you out there to pay very close attention to the changes of the weathers and the people who you have around you, whether in your personal homes or even in your working environment. Even if you work in the public, be very careful, because the pneumonia is serious. And by myself being a 61-year-old man, I have to look out even more so, because the older you get, the more powerful an entity, you might as well say, or sickness like pneumonia will affect you even more so upon a very dangerous and deadly state. So with that being said, everyone, look after themselves, observe your surroundings, and please continue to stay human. And I will be making videos on other subjects and even better subjects in the coming days. But right now, I have to take some time off so that I can heal from this whole pneumonia thing. And with that being said, everyone have a beautiful evening.